Story 1. Well, I can tell you about my worst date ever. It wasn't even my date. My buddy asked if I could bring him and this girl he's been talking to out on my boat. Sure, I'm going out anyway, so why not? The three of us have a lovely day on the boat, drinking, swimming, relaxing, etc. Well, after the date, she tells my friend that she's more interested in me than him, which upset him. She tells me this, but then gets angry when she finds out that I'm married. So she tells my wife that I led her on, and my wife gets angry at me. So here I was, being a nice guy and having a nice day on the boat, and afterward, everyone is angry at me. Story 2. Back in my early 20s, I went on a date with a girl. She brought her friend along. Kind of weird, but I guess women have a right to be nervous meeting a stranger. But we were at a public bar/restaurant place, so I would have to be pretty brazen to do something bad. I tried to ignore it, but she kept talking to her friend every time she asked me a question. It was odd. Like she would talk to her, ask me a question, I would answer, then she would talk to her friend again. This process repeated constantly. Finally, I asked why she kept having a sidebar with her friend after every question, and she said, "Oh, she needs to approve of you first before we can date." I just played it off like it wasn't absolutely insane and continued this weird interrogation-style date until I finally had enough and made an excuse to leave. After I got home, she texted me that her friend approved of me, so far, and she would like to go out again. I told her no thanks, and that was completely bonkers. She tried to play it off like it was in jest or they were just being quirky and fun, but I told her first impressions mean a lot, and told her no thanks and I'm not interested. She texted me a few more times trying to play it off and make excuses, and that she really was interested in me, but I just blocked the number. Thankfully, it ended there. Story 3. Her 2 children were coming along with no previous mention of them. Plus, she lied about her age by at least 15 years. Oh, and if her mother came too, who spoke no English. Her children asked me if I was going home with them that evening. Yeah, no way. Story 4. Instantly ruined if they start talking about their ex in detail. Nothing says awkward quite like a live recounting of past relationship dramas over dinner. Story 5. When she tells me a story about how she shot a man in the face while playing Russian roulette. And yes, the story ended with her serving time for manslaughter. Story 6. Honestly, being late always bothers me. I understand not wanting to be the first one there and having to wait, but as a person, I just bring a book now because being 15 minutes late is almost the standard. Story 7. The worst person I dated suggested we meet at some restaurant. I was an adult over 25, and this restaurant was not cheap or too fancy, just right for a date. We met there, and I had a soda at the bar. I don't know how long he had been there before me or remember what he was drinking. After that meetup, he wanted to get out of there and go to some fast food place, drive-through. I'm like, oh, okay. I thought we were gonna have a nice normal adult date at a decent restaurant, but sure, pal, whatever. He always talked about owning his own business and having a house and bet you never dated a Leo before. I swear I'm not a gold digger, but don't do this. If you can't afford dinner for 2 at a mid-priced restaurant, don't suggest going there in the first place. And if you want to be cheap, don't talk all the time about how much money you have and what a great catch you are. Story 8. When she wears pajamas to the restaurant. When she's checking out some dude at another table in the restaurant. When she talks openly about her venereal disease in the restaurant. Also, when she tries to fight a 300-pound dude over a 6-pack of beer. This was all one woman many years ago. I hope she's doing better. Story 9. Mentioning they use cocaine regularly. This happened twice with 2 different people. I understand it is often an addiction issue, but treating it so casually is strange to me. I do not really want to be around that. Story 10. I once went to the restroom to wash my hands after we were seated, and on my walk back, as I approached our table, I could see she was on a dating app responding to something. I didn't stick around. I turned around, flagged our waitress to give her a small tip. We hadn't ordered anything yet, then walked out. I unmatched her when I got to the car and never heard from her again. So, I'd say being 3 minutes into a date and seeing your date on a dating app during a date instantly ruins it for me. Heaven forbid you wait until after a date to explore your options. Laugh out loud. Story 11. Shows up to the date already under the influence of something, then offers you a swig from the flask in his pocket. Tries to discuss expectations for intimacy and implies that they expect a lot of intimacy in relationships when you haven't even decided if you want to kiss them yet. Wants to talk about starting a family and some pretty serious relationship topics, like how they want to have a large family with 6 children as soon as possible on the first date. Story 12. Arrogance. Talking negatively about women, comparing me to other women, offering backhanded compliments, telling me how he admires some disagreeable individuals like Nietzsche. He surpasses all if he quotes him. Story 13. When they only talk about themselves and ask no questions, showing zero interest in learning about you or hearing your perspective at all, they just want to hear themselves talk. And somehow, then, they think the date went wonderfully. Story 14. The friendship force date. That is, we've been friends for a while and you decided you wanted to push it further to see what happens, but did not inform me of your intentions. So, I just thought we were hanging out as usual. Then, you attempted physical contact, and when I did not respond, you got upset. Story 15. I was once on a date where the guy didn't start any conversation. I'm fine with being silent sometimes, but he didn't speak if he wasn't spoken to. And he couldn't make any type of decisions like where should we go and what should we do. And after the date, he just ran away, and I never heard from him again. Story 16. Upping everything. It feels like any question was just a setup to a competition that only she's interested in. And it reminds me of my family, so hard pass. Story 17. When my wife shows up, then it's, who the heck is she? This, and you said you weren't married, that. It's just a total mess from then on out. Tried to salvage it a couple of times, but they just lost interest. Story 18. When it feels like I am running the entire conversation, if you cannot ask simple questions like, have you traveled anywhere? Are you from here? Or anything along those lines, you need to be a bit more extroverted, even if it is a bit outside of your comfort zone. Because the best relationships should challenge you, even just a little bit. Story 19. When you give her your phone in the car to play some music she likes, and then you look over and see in the reflection of the passenger window that she's going through your text messages. Story 20. My issue arises when individuals overlook my feelings about a subject that comes up in conversation, opting instead to persuade me as to why I should not feel that way, using their own opinions and experiences regarding the topic. They completely ignore any follow-up questions about why I might feel that way. Story 21. Negativity. If they only talk about things they don't like, or even worse, if they speak poorly about ex-partners, it is really hard to have a good time when it feels like a counseling session. Story 22. Our first date went great, but on the second date, she showed up a little upset and told me her mom called her a bitch, which was fine, but it was a little awkward because I didn't know her well. After lunch, I suggested we take my car to a nearby park, but she told me how she was worried her car would get broken into, even though we were in a very nice, busy area at noon. Seemed very random to me. On our third date, the parking lot we were supposed to meet at was full, and when I called to ask where she was so I could meet up with her, she made zero effort to help, citing how she didn't know the area. We ended up walking there separately. Story 23. I am married now and I am old, for what it's worth. Anyone who attempts to undermine their date. I don't understand why men, and some women, I am sure, think this strategy works. I almost feel bad for them. Emotional manipulation is obviously very dangerous in long-term relationships, but on a first date, it's just plain stupid. Neither party is invested yet, so it's easy to spot. Why would anyone want to spend time around someone who isn't fun to be around? I don't get it. Story. I once went to the bathroom and ditched the remainder of the date because the guy was trying to undermine me. Multiple unsuccessful undermining attempts happened. I should have left the date even earlier, but here are a few highlights. Told me my disability was fake. Made fun of me for not already having other plans that afternoon/evening. I guess only losers make time for dates. Had strange things to say about a dress I knew I looked sexy in, and none of them were compliments. The final straw was his attempt to, I guess, underhandedly tell me I was attractive. All your exes saw you as an object. I know another girl who said someone said almost verbatim the same thing to her, and we thought it came from one of those pickup artist handbooks. Goodbye. Story 24. When I was 18, I went on a date where we sat on a park bench with a 21-year-old, which just ended up being a proposal for friends with benefits. He psychoanalyzed me, walked ahead of me, did not even look at me half the time, and then would stare at my chest. Then he went on and said, "Virgins like you end up going to college and engaging with one person and then another until they get to 30 partners, and at some point end up facing assault. I am 22 and still a virgin." Story 25. A long time ago, before I was married, I went on a first date with a guy. He was super sweet and cute and took me out for dinner. However, he started talking about the logistics of how I could stay over at his house, etc., and I felt it was very presumptuous. I don't think we ever ended up hooking up. Story 26. Not washing their hands after going to the bathroom and talking about the ex like it was the Titanic-sized trauma of their life, but they don't want to delve into much detail. Still, they just casually mention her over and over again. But you know, I am totally over her. Bruh, therapy? Story 27. Talking only about himself, showing no interest in you, and him constantly on his phone. If it dings that he got a message, he has to check it immediately. Story 28. One time, a girl I went out to dinner with started peeling her fingernails at the table after we were done eating, while she was talking to me. That was nice. Story 29. I went on one date with a guy who felt the need to fact-check me throughout the night. He tried to correct me regarding a diagnosed medical condition I have, and when I told him he was wrong, he had to look it up. Lo and behold, I was correct. He told me he knew a shortcut to a location I drive regularly and, again, had to look it up to prove me wrong. I wasn't. This continued until I just stopped saying anything. What a tool. Story 30. I went on a date with a woman who, within the first 10 minutes, said that she didn't go out much, does not have hobbies, and is kind of boring. The same thing happened at a speed dating event a few months back. Story 31. What instantly ruins a date for me is when someone is regularly rude to service staff. It shows a lack of respect and kindness, which are important qualities to me. Story 32. When they open their mouths and reveal they have conservative values, but they really mean that they hate brown people and immigrants, think Trump is a genius, etc. They're allowed to think those things, but we won't be having a second date. Story 33. When the person not only shows no interest in what you tell them, but also uses it as a hook to talk about themselves. I think my favorite place in the world is Tanzania. Really? Oh, I've been there in a certain year, so beautiful, and I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. Did you know? Blah blah, date ruined. Story 34. A woman bringing her dog. I understand the concept, and I recognize that many women rely on their dog for emotional support, but it essentially undermines her ability to be present in the moment. You were sitting there, halfway through a sentence, and she says, "Oh my God, isn't he so cute? He's so cute. Aren't you so cute?" It just never works out well. As I mentioned, I understand, but in my opinion, it creates a situation where any man seeking a genuine connection will become annoyed. Any man who does not get annoyed is likely tolerating it for one reason, and we all know what that is. Story 35. He talked about the frequency of his family members taking their own lives and how much medication he is on for every mental illness under the sun. Like, first, dates are meant to be fun, and second, sort yourself out before dating. Story 36. I haven't dated in many years, but if I remember correctly, one-word answers indicating she's not interested. B. Constantly looking at her phone or watch. C. Not laughing at my fantastic jokes. And believe me, they are fantastic. Story 37. When they hit a vape while on the first date, especially when it wasn't expressed that they even had one, it concerns me. I don't think vaping is wrong, but for some reason, not being able to keep yourself away from your vape during the first date shows me that you've got very little self-control, or you are pretty deep into an addiction, and I don't want to be a part of that situation. Story 38. When she asks me about my cute or hot friend and then says, "I'm just kidding," and I'm like, "Are you through?" Because it seems like, forget it. This isn't working out. He's single too, by the way.